I was mid-presentation when Branick Vale walked into the conference room. My team of 8 engineers sat around the table, laptops open, reviewing our quarterly targets. We'd been planning this product launch for 6 months. The room fell silent as he entered. He didn't knock. He never did. Branick was the kind of manager who treated doors like suggestions and people like obstacles. He wore his usual dark suit, arms crossed, that cold smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Talia," he said, cutting through my sentence. "We need to talk about your budget." My throat tightened. The way he said it, so casual, so deliberate. I knew immediately something was wrong. "Your team's funding has been strategically reallocated," he continued, pulling a folder from under his arm. "Effective immediately, you're down 50%. The words hit like a hammer. Half our budget. Gone. My engineers exchanged panicked glances. I stared at Branick, trying to process what he'd just said. 50%. We had contracts to fulfill, prototypes to finish, deadlines in 3 weeks. "That's impossible," I managed. "We're in the middle of a development cycle." Branick shrugged, placing the folder on the table. "Company priorities shift. I'm sure you'll adapt." He turned to leave, but paused at the door. Leaning close enough that only I could hear, he whispered, "Let's see if you can lead without a safety net, Monroe." Then he was gone. The room stayed silent for a long moment. My senior engineer, Caleb, spoke first. "What do we do?" I looked at the faces around the table. Fear. Confusion. Doubt. They were looking to me for answers I didn't have. "We figure it out," I said, though my voice felt hollow. But inside, I was screaming. This wasn't about budgets. This was sabotage. And everyone in that room knew it. The all-hands meeting 2 days later was torture. The entire company gathered in the main auditorium, over 200 employees filling the rows of seats. Branick stood at the podium, confident and polished, presenting the quarterly report. Then he got to my department. "I'd like to highlight a critical budget correction I implemented this week," he announced, his voice smooth. The engineering division was experiencing significant inefficiencies. By reallocating resources, we're ensuring company-wide optimization. Applause rippled through the room. My face burned. He'd framed it like a success story, like cutting my team's lifeline was strategic genius. I sat in the back row, hands clenched in my lap, watching him bask in the approval. After the meeting, I stayed behind, pretending to check my phone. That's when I heard it. Branick was talking to someone near the stage. "She'll be gone by next quarter," he said, laughing. "Mark my words." The cracks started showing within a week. Caleb, my most experienced engineer, handed me his resignation letter on a Tuesday morning. "I'm sorry, Talia," he said, avoiding eye contact. "I just don't have confidence this team can deliver anymore." His words stung worse than Branick's budget cut. I'd hired Caleb myself 3 years ago. We'd built this department together. Now he was walking away. After he left, I sat alone in my office, staring at the resignation letter. My hands shook. Maybe Branick was right. Maybe I couldn't do this. I almost typed up my own resignation. Almost. Then I went to the printer to collect a document I'd sent earlier. Someone had left papers behind. I almost ignored them, but my name caught my eye. It was a handwritten note. Branick's handwriting. "When Monroe fails, her clients are mine." I stood there, holding that note, feeling something shift inside me. The betrayal wasn't just suspected anymore. It was confirmed. And suddenly, I wasn't thinking about quitting. I was thinking about winning. That night, I stayed late in the office, long after everyone else had gone home. The building was quiet, just the hum of computers and the occasional click of the security guard's footsteps. I pulled up the company policy manual on my laptop. If Branick had found a way to sabotage me, maybe I could find a way to fight back. I read through section after section. Budget allocation, resource management, departmental procedures. Most of it was standard corporate language, designed to protect the company, not individual managers. Then I found something. Buried in Section 7, subsection 12. A clause about interdepartmental resource sharing. It stated that any 2 department heads could agree to trade resources, equipment, or personnel, as long as both leads approved and documented it properly. A loophole. A small one, but it was there. I leaned back in my chair, thinking, who could I approach? Who would actually help me? I started making a list. Neera Voss was not my friend. She ran the design department, and we'd clashed more than once over project priorities. She was cold, ambitious, and ruthlessly efficient. Most people avoided her. But she was also smart. And she had resources I needed. I found her in her office 2 days later, reviewing mock-ups on her massive monitor. Monroe, she said without looking up. What do you want? I didn't waste time. I need design resources for 3 weeks. In exchange, I'll give you full access to our analytics engine. She finally looked at me. Why would I help you? Everyone knows Branick's trying to push you out. I met her gaze. Because when he's done with me, he'll come for you next. He's building an empire, Neera. And ambitious people like you are threats to him. She studied me for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. You've got guts, Monroe. Let's make him sweat. Within a week, I'd built a quiet network. Neera's design team. The data analytics group. Even the small hardware prototyping lab that everyone ignored. We called it Project Helix, after the intertwined structure of DNA. Each team gave a little, got a little. We shared equipment, traded expertise, worked late shifts together. It was underground, unofficial, and entirely within company policy. The energy was different. People started showing up early, staying late. Not because I demanded it, but because they wanted to. We weren't just surviving Branick's cuts. We were thriving despite them. Our productivity spiked. Deadlines that should have been impossible became achievable. By the end of the second week, my team had completed 2 prototype iterations. Then Branick noticed. I saw him in the hallway, staring at the productivity charts posted on the department board. His expression was unreadable. But his jaw was tight. He knew something had changed. He just didn't know what. The email came on a Thursday morning. Subject line: Mandatory Performance Audit. Branick had requested a full review of my department's resource usage. He wanted receipts, time logs, equipment records. Everything. It was clearly designed to catch me misusing resources, to prove I was breaking rules, to justify firing me. My team panicked. What if they find Project Helix? Asked Mira, one of my junior engineers. I stayed calm. They'll find exactly what we documented. Legal resource sharing between departments. Everything's approved, signed, and filed. The audit took 3 days. Auditors combed through our records, interviewed team members, checked every transaction. When the report came back, Branick requested a public presentation of the findings. He wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone. The day of the presentation, the conference room was packed. Branick sat in the front row, arms crossed, that familiar cold smile on his face. Then the auditor began. Monroe's department shows a 42% increase in output. All resource sharing is documented and compliant. Branick's smile faded. Celine, our CEO, stood up and clapped. Excellent work, Talia. This is exactly the innovation we need. I thought the audit would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, screenshots of internal chat messages appeared in my inbox. Someone had leaked conversations where I'd vented about Branick's sabotage. Messages where I'd called him manipulative, power-hungry, dangerous. They were taken out of context, stripped of the conversations around them, made to look like baseless attacks. HR called me in. Branick sat across from me in the small conference room, face neutral, playing the victim perfectly. Unprofessional conduct, the HR manager said, sliding a written warning across the table. You need to maintain workplace decorum, regardless of personal feelings. I signed it, hands steady, but inside I was burning. Someone on my team had betrayed me. Someone I trusted had handed Branick ammunition. That night, I lay awake, running through names, trying to figure out who would do this. The thought made me sick. I'd fought so hard to keep my team together. And someone had stabbed me in the back. I called a team meeting the next morning. Everyone sat around the table, avoiding eye contact, the tension thick enough to cut. Someone leaked my messages to Branick, I said, voice steady. I need to know who. Silence. Long, uncomfortable silence. Then Finn, my youngest analyst, stood up. His hands were shaking. "It was me," he whispered. The room erupted. Accusations, anger, disbelief. I held up my hand for silence. "Why?" I asked quietly. Finn looked at the floor. "Branick called me into his office 2 weeks ago. He said if I didn't tell him what you were planning, he'd fire me. My student loans, my apartment, I couldn't afford to lose this job." He finally looked up at me, eyes red. "I'm sorry, Talia. I'm so sorry." Part of me wanted to be angry. But looking at him, I just felt tired. "You should have told me," I said. Then, to everyone's surprise, including my own, I added, "But I forgive you." Finn blinked. "What? You made a mistake under pressure. I get it." I paused. "But now you're going to help me fix this." His face changed. Determination replaced fear. "Anything. I'll do anything." He pulled out his phone. "Branick gave me access to his shared drive. To monitor your files. I still have it." That night, Finn and I sat in my office, door locked, laptop screen glowing between us. He navigated through Branick's files, folders I should never have access to. Budget reports, project plans, email drafts. Then we found it. A folder labeled Strategic Initiative. Inside was a complete project proposal. A product concept that looked eerily familiar. Because it was mine. Branick had taken the original proposal my team submitted 6 months ago, the one that got us initial funding, and repackaged it under his name. The budget he'd cut from my team had been reallocated directly to fund this ghost project. He was planning to present it at the next company showcase as his own innovation. "That's theft," Finn said quietly. I stared at the screen, rage and clarity mixing. "That's evidence," I corrected. "I copied everything onto a secure drive. Then I started planning. If Branick wanted to steal my work, I'd let him. Right up until the moment I exposed him in front of everyone who mattered." The company showcase happened twice a year. It was where teams presented their biggest innovations to executives, investors, and board members. I volunteered my team for the next one. Branick's eyes narrowed when he heard. He approached me in the hallway the next day. "Planning something ambitious, Monroe?" he asked, that fake concern in his voice. "Just showing what we've accomplished despite our challenges," I replied sweetly. He didn't trust it. I could see the calculation in his eyes. But he couldn't stop me from presenting without raising suspicion. The weeks leading up to the showcase were intense. My team refined our prototype, polished the presentation, rehearsed until every word was perfect. We were presenting the exact concept Branick had stolen, but with our original research, our documentation, our names. Meanwhile, Branick was preparing his own presentation. The stolen version. Same core idea, different branding. He scheduled his slot right after mine. He wanted to upstage me, to show how much better his version was. What he didn't know was that I'd planned for exactly this. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait. The day of the showcase arrived. The auditorium was filled with over 300 people. Executives in the front rows, employees filling the back. I stood backstage, heart pounding, watching the previous presenter finish. Then it was my turn. I walked out, confident, connecting my laptop to the main display. My presentation appeared on the massive screen. I began. Clear, concise, explaining the problem our product solved, the innovation we developed, the market potential. 30 seconds in, the screen flickered. Then went black. Someone had tampered with it. I heard murmurs in the audience. Branick sat in the third row, arms crossed, barely suppressing a smile. This was his sabotage. His final play. But I'd prepared for this. I pulled out a tablet from my bag, switched to manual demo mode, and held it up. "Technical difficulties," I said calmly. "Let me show you the working prototype instead." I walked through the demonstration, the audience leaning forward to see. The product worked flawlessly. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. Investors stood up. Celine was beaming. I looked at Branick. His smile was gone. He stood abruptly and walked out, fury radiating from every step. I thought his exit meant defeat. I was wrong. The next morning, whispers started circulating. "Did you hear? Monroe stole Branick's project idea. Branick developed that concept months ago. She's taking credit for his work. By noon, HR had called me in again. This time, it was serious. We've received allegations that you misappropriated proprietary work, the HR manager said. A formal review is being launched. Branick had moved fast. He'd flipped the narrative completely. Now I was the thief, and he was the victim. The brilliance of it was sickening. He'd waited until after my successful presentation to strike, making it look like I'd stolen his glory. I have documentation proving that project was mine, I said. We'll review everything, HR replied. Until then, you're suspended pending investigation. Suspended. The word echoed in my head as I walked out. I'd won the showcase and lost everything else. That night, I sat in my apartment, laptop closed, phone off. My career hung by a thread. And Branick had cut it with surgical precision. I didn't leave my apartment for 2 days. I ignored calls, didn't check email, just sat in the silence of potential failure. Everything I'd built, gone. On the third morning, I finally opened my laptop. A message notification blinked. The sender made me sit up straight. Elias Corvin, our Chief Financial Officer. Subject line, I think you're being framed. I stared at it for a full minute before clicking. The message was brief. I've reviewed the financial records related to your budget cut. The numbers don't add up. Can we meet? Somewhere private. This is bigger than you think. I replied immediately. We agreed to meet at a small cafe across town, far from the office. That afternoon, I walked into the cafe, scanning for Elias. He sat in a back corner, laptop open, looking nervous. Thanks for coming, he said as I sat down. I've been tracking some irregularities in departmental budgets, he continued quietly. Your cut was just the beginning. Branick's been moving money around for months. He turned his laptop toward me. Spreadsheets filled the screen, highlighted cells showing fund transfers. Every dollar cut from your team, Elias said, went into a discretionary account under Branick's control. I felt cold. How much? Over $300,000. We spent the next hour connecting dots. Every strategic reallocation matched deposits into Branick's hidden ledger. As we worked, I noticed someone outside the cafe window. A man with a camera. He raised it, pointed it at us, and snapped a photo. Then disappeared into the crowd. Elias saw it too. He knows we're digging, he said quietly. The message came the next morning. Emergency disciplinary hearing. Your presence required. 9 a.m. Conference Room B. I walked into that room knowing it was a trap. Branick sat at the head of the table, flanked by HR and 2 executives I didn't recognize. Talia Monroe, he began, voice dripping with false sadness. It pains me to do this, but the evidence of intellectual property theft is overwhelming. He slid a folder across the table. Documents showing my project proposal dated after his. Emails I'd allegedly sent discussing borrowing ideas. All fabricated, but polished. Professional. You're finished, Monroe, he said, that cold smile finally breaking through. Then the door opened. Elias walked in, carrying a thick folder. Before we proceed, Elias said calmly, I have financial records that need to be reviewed. Branick's smile faltered. This isn't a financial matter, he said quickly. Actually, Elias replied, opening his folder. It is. Because the funding used to develop your project was illegally diverted from Ms. Monroe's department budget. He placed printed spreadsheets on the table. Every transaction, dated and documented. This isn't about stolen ideas. This is about stolen money. Branick's face went pale. The room fell silent. Celine, who'd been observing quietly, stood up. I think we need to expand this investigation. The board called an emergency meeting the next day. Every executive, every department head, all gathered in the main conference room. Branick sat across from me, his earlier confidence replaced by something sharper. Desperation. This is a coordinated attack, he told the board. Monroe is colluding with Corvin to fabricate evidence because she can't accept her own failure. He was smooth, I'll give him that. He painted me as bitter, manipulative, willing to lie to save my career. Some board members nodded along. Then Neera Voss walked in. She wasn't invited, but she entered anyway, carrying a tablet. "I apologize for interrupting," she said, not sounding apologetic at all. "But I have something the board needs to see." She connected her tablet to the display. Collaboration logs appeared on screen. "Every resource trade Ms. Monroe made was documented and approved," Neera explained. "This shows clear authorization for Project Helix. Everything was legitimate. Unlike Mr. Vale's hidden accounts." She pulled up another file. Signed forms, dated records, all proving my team's work was original and properly managed. Branick tried to interrupt, but the board chair held up his hand. "Mr. Vale, you're suspended pending full investigation. Effective immediately." The news spread through the company like wildfire. By noon, everyone knew. Monroe cleared. Vale suspended. I walked through the office, and people actually looked at me. Not with pity or doubt, but with something like respect. My team gathered in our conference room that afternoon. They'd all been working remotely during my suspension, uncertain if we even had jobs. "We're back," I told them. "Full budget restored, projects moving forward." They cheered, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. Branick might have been suspended, but I knew men like him. They don't just disappear. That night, a message appeared on my phone. "Unknown number. You haven't seen the last of me." I stared at it, then deleted it. Let him threaten. I wasn't afraid anymore. But I also wasn't naive. This wasn't over. I was right. 2 weeks later, documents started appearing online. Internal company memos, financial reports, emails discussing budget decisions. All leaked to industry blogs and news sites. The headlines were brutal. "Tech company hides corruption? Executive mismanagement exposed." The documents were real, but cherry-picked, taken out of context to make the entire company look corrupt. And the implication was clear. If the company wouldn't reinstate Branick, he'd burn it down. Celine called an emergency executive meeting. "He's threatening us," she said bluntly. "If we don't settle, he goes public with more." One of the board members looked at me. "Maybe if Monroe took partial responsibility, we could end this quietly. Show we're addressing issues." I felt the room shift. They were considering throwing me under the bus to save face. My phone buzzed. A text from Elias. "Found something. It's worse than we thought. Don't agree to anything." I looked up at Celine. "Give me 24 hours, I said. "Before you decide anything, give me 1 day." Elias and I spent that night in his office, door locked, digging through financial servers. We had authorization now, full access since the investigation began. "There," Elias said, pointing at the screen. Buried deep in archived files was a transfer order. Branick's signature, authorizing payments to an external vendor. $30,000, marked as consulting fees. "Who's the vendor?" I asked. Elias pulled up the business registration. Vale Consulting LLC. Registered owner, Marcus Vale. He looked at me. "That's Branick's brother." It wasn't just budget manipulation. It was fraud. Branick had been funneling company money to his own family's business, using fake consulting contracts as cover. We printed everything. Every transfer, every signature, every fabricated invoice. By dawn, we had a complete evidence file. When I arrived at the office that morning, HR told me Branick had resigned. He submitted it last night, they said. Effective immediately. Something felt wrong. Men like Branick don't quit. They don't surrender. That afternoon, a package arrived at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. "My confession. Do what you want with it." I stared at the USB drive for a long time before plugging it in. The files were audio recordings. Branick's voice, unmistakable. I listened to the first one. "She was better than me," he said, voice tired, resigned. "That's why I had to break her." Another recording. "I knew if I cut her funding, she'd collapse. Then I could take her clients, her projects, build my reputation on her failure." There were hours of recordings. Him admitting to sabotage, to theft, to fraud. A complete confession, meticulously documented. I sat back, feeling strange. Not victorious. Not even satisfied. Just sad. Sad that someone had been so consumed by fear and jealousy that they destroyed themselves trying to destroy someone else. I could bury him with this. Send it to the board, to the press, to law enforcement. Ruin him completely. But what would that accomplish? I copied the files to a secure backup. Then I made a decision. I requested a meeting with the board. Full transparency, I told them. No more secrets. I walked into that boardroom and placed the USB drive on the table. This contains Branick Vale's recorded confession, I said, admitting to sabotage, fraud, and financial misconduct. I played selected portions. The room went silent. When it finished, the board chair looked shaken. Why are you showing us this? He asked. Because I'm asking you to reform the system that let this happen, I replied. Not just punish one person, but fix the culture that allowed it. I outlined suggestions. Anonymous reporting systems. Regular financial audits. Clear policies against retaliation. Protection for whistleblowers. Branick wasn't the disease, I said. He was a symptom. And unless we address the root cause, someone else will do the same thing. The board listened. Actually listened. We'll implement changes, Celine said finally, starting with a complete review of management practices. As I left that room, I felt something shift. Not victory. Something deeper. Purpose. The reforms took months to implement. New reporting systems, restructured budgets, transparent project approvals. The company changed slowly, but visibly. During this time, I got a call from Celine. Can you come to my office? She asked. I walked up to the executive floor, uncertain what to expect. Celine stood at her window, looking out over the city. We need a new director of innovation, she said without preamble. Someone who understands both technology and people. Someone who's proven they can lead through crisis. She turned to face me. I'm offering you the position. Branick's former role. I stared at her. The office that once belonged to my saboteur. The position he'd fought so hard to protect. Now offered to me. I need to think about it, I said. She smiled. Take your time. But Talia, you've earned this. Not through politics or manipulation. Through actual leadership. That night, I stood in my apartment, thinking about everything that had happened. The cuts, the sabotage, the betrayal. How close I'd come to quitting. And how different things looked now. I accepted the position. My first day as Director of Innovation felt surreal. The office was bigger, the view better, the responsibility heavier. My old team threw me a small celebration. You did it, Mira said, raising her coffee cup. You survived Branick and came out on top. But I shook my head. It wasn't about beating him. It was about building something better. And I meant it. Over the next months, I focused on changing how we worked. No more budget cuts as punishment. No more siloed departments. No more fear-based management. Project Helix, which had started as a survival tactic, became our official collaboration model. Teams sharing resources, supporting each other, building together instead of competing. Productivity soared. Employee satisfaction increased. We weren't just making better products. We were becoming a better company. One afternoon, Elias stopped by my office. You know, he said, most people in your position would have buried Branick. Made him pay for what he did. I leaned back in my chair. Burying him wouldn't have fixed anything. Building something better does. 6 months after taking the director position, I received an email from an unknown address. The subject line made my breath catch. Thank you. I opened it cautiously. Talia, you don't know me, but I worked under Branick before you. He did to me what he tried to do to you. I left the industry because I thought I wasn't good enough. When I heard your story, I realized it wasn't me. It was him. I'm back in tech now. Working at a startup. Happy again. Thank you for exposing the truth. Thank you for not giving up. I read that email 3 times. Then saved it. Because that's what this was really about. Not revenge. Not victory. Impact. Changing things so the next person wouldn't have to fight the same battle. That evening, I stood at my office window, looking out at the city lights. I thought about the day Branick walked into that conference room and cut my budget. How terrified I'd been. How close I'd come to breaking. But I hadn't broken. I'd bent, adapted, built something new from the wreckage. My phone buzzed. A message from my team. Game night at Finn's place. You in? I smiled and typed back. Absolutely. A year later, I gave a presentation at an industry conference. The topic was leading through crisis. I told my story. The budget cuts, the sabotage, the choice to build instead of destroy. Afterward, a young manager approached me. My boss is doing something similar, she confided quietly. Cutting my resources, taking credit for my work. I don't know what to do. I looked at her, seeing myself from 2 years ago. Scared, uncertain, wondering if I was strong enough. Document everything, I told her. Build alliances. Find the loopholes in company policy. And remember, you're not fighting to destroy them. You're fighting to prove what you can do despite them. She nodded, eyes bright with determination. As I watched her walk away, I thought about Branick. I'd heard he'd started a consulting business, though it wasn't doing well. Part of me wondered if he'd learned anything from what happened. But mostly, I'd stopped thinking about him. Because this story wasn't really about him. It was about me. About discovering that the worst thing someone can do to you isn't cut your budget or steal your work. It's convince you that you're not capable of rising above it. Branick had cut my budget to destroy me. Instead, I'd turned it into the blueprint for change. And that, more than any revenge, felt like winning.